Everyone has something to share in either wisdom, story, or logic, and it's clearly amazing to hear all the differing missing links discovered by people unique to their own journeys, and in how they have come to discover them. Together, we can help to build a bigger picture for a better future, for a brighter tomorrow. Let's stand united. Let's remove the veils, and let's create a new world together. Are you that missing link? Join Jesse Hale on the Missing Link Talk Show as he helps to unveil the mystery through the unique wisdom and story of others.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome everybody back to the Missing Link. This is our third Missing Link for our Missing Link Thursdays. We are excited here to have Will Keller, who's a freedom activist, animist, anarchist, and student teacher of the nature, and a father. How are you today, Brother Will?
I'm doing well, Jesse. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome. You were referred to me and said that you would be a great guest, so I checked you out, and here you are on the Missing Link. So maybe you can tell us about yourself, about your journey, get people to know who you are before we, start chatting about the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My journey begins as a kid, honestly. I was very much in my imagination, and I saw nature as magic and alive. So, come to identifying that and defining that as animism, that nature is aware and alive, and everything is consciousness. I had this within me very young as a kid. The control system, cultural structures didn't sit well with me as a young kid. Eventually, I did kind of integrate into that in my teens, being a musician in the hip hop industry, and had a somewhat successful career and did a lot of touring and stuff. But ultimately, my heart was in knowledge. I wanted to reduce everything down into its functions and how it operated in the natural world. And that's been a common theme in my life, diving into occultism, which is hidden knowledge, and a lot of ancient cultures and traditions. Definitely opened up, many paths to an expanded worldview, coming across many researchers. For instance, Jordan Maxwell, rest in peace, Jordan Maxwell. He passed away yesterday. He had a huge influence on my awareness. And then Mark Passio, and I can name a whole list of people. But these people were very instrumental in my, you can call, awakening or journey to awareness. But my life changed completely when I fell into dark days of addiction. And what this did was it made me face myself, how I operated. How did I get into this situation where I literally was looking in the mirror and not liking who I was looking at, the reflection back onto me. So this made me dive into a process of self-evaluation on how my psyche operates and functions, which leads into, the realm of consciousness and psychology. From there, coming out of those dark days was definitely a blessing in disguise, because I used these techniques and knowledge that I was acquiring to look at the world through this lens, or what we call perception, to give myself a more accurate perception of what's going on today. So I stand on the shoulders of giants to see further. And this is what it's all about. It's all about, going public, bringing knowledge forward, and kind of honing in on an accurate perception of what's going on today.
If anybody's out there that's listening right now that's still battling addiction themselves, do you have any advice for them, or any words that that you can maybe share with them to help them in their journey right now?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, you're the only one that can change this. You can have a support system, which is phenomenal, but no one's going to do the work for you. The mirror, get comfortable with the mirror and sit in front of it. And journaling helps, but asking those hard questions. because with addiction, we're bearing the insecurities, the failures, the issues in our life, the unresolved traumas, and that will output into our behavior in the form of addiction. So the answer lies right in front of you in your own psyche, in the mirror. So that's the best advice, straightforward advice I can give someone.
So you mentioned traumas, and 9 out of 10 people can, have some kind of a severe injury, break their leg, or be in the hospital, get put on a bunch of painkillers, for whatever, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and then have no problem getting off of them. But it's that 1 out of 10 who gets on them that has a difficulty getting off. And it seems the common link is, people that have had some kind of severe traumas in their life, and then they find solace or comfort, in these, painkillers or drugs or alcohol. And it seems like that may be the common thread with people that are battling with addiction.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're band-aids, right? We have to dive down into the causal factor, the why, and this always lies in the mind, in the psyche. And addiction actually is a great field to look at, and how to come out of addiction, talking about the mind and how it operates, and trauma, because we live in a society that's extremely traumatic. Everyone in today's age has had some kind of trauma, whether that be, it's a gradient. You can have family, physical trauma, but then again, we have cultural trauma as well. And the system of control and how humans are living in our current civilization is traumatic in itself. It's, for me, I diagnose everything down to either the natural or the artificial. So we're very much living in an artificial society, separate from nature, which that's absolutely not the case. We can never be separate from nature. What we need to do is getting to a state of balance, of symbiosis with the natural world. And this also implies to the individual. So diving deep into the psychology is where it's at.
So, you mentioned this kind of, duality, or, kind of separateness from nature, where actually we're supposed to be living symbiotically, but it seems like, we're living more technologically now, and a kind of away from, our true purpose. Some people call it maybe even a holographic universe, that this may be a simulation. What's your thoughts on, kind of what kind of, system that we're living in right now?
Yeah, the nature of reality. Well, I definitely do not think it's, well, yes and no. And a simulation, meaning, are we plugged in somewhere and having the experience? No, I do not think that. I think we are incarnated. We are consciousness having an experience here to evolve and grow, to lower entropy, and to ultimately learn how to become a moral being. And this will advance. Consciousness always wants to expand and evolve and advance. And this, ultimately, what I just defined, is freedom. And this is where my work focuses on. What is freedom and how do we achieve it? So the nature of reality, what we need to understand is that the natural world is inherent. It's put here by the creator. It's not man-made. So when you say, when we're living in a mechanical, a material age, everything is mechanical. This gets in the realm of artificial, where we are mentally constructing ideas, and they are more like parasitic than they are symbiosis with the natural world. And I take this concept and break it down even further, down to the energetic or the metaphysical laws that govern reality. This is called natural law, cosmic law, or the laws of nature. But these are boundary conditions that are in place in here by the creator for us to understand the parameters of reality that we're living in. Because everything's going to have an effect, and everything's going to have a cause. So there are consequences to everything that we do. And this is what the laws of nature are. They're the boundary conditions of human beings operating in this reality.
So it seems like they're pushing us to technology every way they can. And you even got people like, Elon Musk that's trying to Neuralink people and merging people in computers. There's really lots of talk about the transhumanism agenda. What do you think about what's happening there, and how can we, kind of steer ourselves clear from what seems to be kind of an insane path to merge us with the computer?
Yeah, transhumanism has been in the works for many, many, many years. And what the social engineers, the players behind the veil that are, manipulating and manufacturing where society is going, what they ultimately want is to form the ultimate control system. These are people, these are psychopaths that want to play God in this reality. So ultimately, merging machine with human beings is their goal. So they don't have to go through the natural processes of reincarnating again and going through life reviews or anything like that. They want to exist on this plane, but have control over everything. They want to rule over nature, which ultimately they never can do that. But mostly they want to control human beings. We are the energy, and they want to control that for their own agenda.
So they can't patent nature as part of one of their, laws that they've, created. They seem to break them and extend them and change them in every single kind of way. But what they do is they take anything that's natural and then they modify it and then they patent it, or they make synthetic copies of. Right now, there's talks about they're trying to modify the human so that way they can claim ownership of people, not just through their birth certificate, which they already have, or not through their cell phones, which they track and trace everybody already through their cell phones, but actual have, physical paper ownership of a person by modifying them.
Yeah, no, genetic modification has been going on for thousands of years in the form of eugenics. So yeah, this is just the next stage. And I think, and one of my big messages is that there's many paths and rabbit holes that we can dive into that people come out and talk about, which I do think are important. But what's even more important is the why. Why is this happening? We know it is. I mean, you can just look at the needle craft or the genetic modification that people are taking. That's literally changing the structure of their DNA. So eugenics has been going on for a long time. But why is this happening? How do we create change? Many people say they want freedom, they want change, good health, they want the system to change, which in reality, how does that happen? And this is where my work dives into. Ultimately, the social engineers, the dark occultists, and again, I'll define this word occultism. Occult simply means hidden. But why I use it is because it's a body of knowledge that has been kept hidden from humanity for eons. And this knowledge, this information, is the information on how the human psyche operates and the laws of nature or reality operates. So we do live in an age of information, which is great. But then again, humans need to have the willpower and the care to look into this information. So it is out there, and there are people talking about it. But ultimately, this body of knowledge will answer the question of why. Why is this going on, and how do we change it? And ultimately, it's knowing ourselves and knowing how reality operates on a very personal level. We're constantly communicating with reality. And what it truly comes down to is if we're moral or not. So hopefully we can dive into what morality is. And I want to go back to what you said, how they like to take nature and invert everything. And that's absolutely true. The overarching agenda it's the agenda against nature. They want to flip, they want to take the concepts of nature or the natural world and invert them and then try to spoon feed them to humanity. And unfortunately, humanity is in the aggregate, in the collective, we are we are taking that and being immoral by our actions.
Have you heard of communitarianism and how they're using that to further their agenda?
I've heard a little bit about that.
So, communitarianism, it's basically taking the rights of the collective over the individual rights. And,
Yeah.
and the big problem is the people who are controlling or, molding those collective rights are nefarious in themselves. So it's, they're using and playing on people's, strings by getting them thinking that, yes, we need to do this for the betterment of humanity, but really it's not. It's the betterment of this small group of slugs that seem to want to destroy everything.
Yeah, exactly. So, and here we go with the artificial and the natural. There's no such thing as group rights in the natural world, right? Rights are inherent. They exist because we exist in this reality field. Rights do not come from a social construct. They do not come from government, and they absolutely do not come from any kind of piece of paper, including the Constitution. So this is something that that people need to understand. Because you exist and you are in your body and using your body, you have ownership of your body. That's self-ownership, and no one can say what you can do with that body. Of course, as long as you don't harm anyone. So these are natural rights, right? Actions that we can take that do not cause harm. And we can talk about wrongdoings as well, because there's only just a few. There's murder, assault, rape, trespass, theft, coercion, and deceit, right? These are the wrongdoings. And all of these wrongdoings come down to one thing, and that is is theft, a stealing of someone's property, life, etc. Now, most people would agree with this, but the problem is taking what I said and applying it to the world. Because the biggest issue that we have is that people do not understand what morality is and what natural rights are. The majority of people cannot give you a correct and accurate definition of a right. So yes, there is government and these groups of people that are trying to be the arbiters of rights and truth. And the only way this actually has any kind of validity or power, well, it's never valid, but why it has power is because the people give it power. The ignorance of the people, the ignorance of natural rights and natural law, they're able to be manipulated, and then they take certain immoral actions. And this is the big problem, is that belief systems are based in dogma, and they're not actually based in the natural world. Yet belief systems are extremely powerful because the mind is extremely powerful. The all is mind. The universe is mental, right? This is a mental construct of the creator, and as above, so below. Our mind is prime. So our mental state. So whatever you hold into your mind will dictate the actions and the behaviors that you will take. So people believe in human authority, right? They believe in government. They believe that another human being has quote unquote authority over another human being. And this is a false religion that people need to understand is actually the causal factor of everything that we see going on in the world. Because we can go down a list of issues, but ultimately, if we reduce it down, it comes down to incorrect thinking, and then incorrect action and behavior. True empowerment resides in the individual. There are no group rights, right? Collective rights are stemmed from the individuals, and we all have the same individual rights. So this is what, like my shirt says, government is a euphemism, and government is a religion that unfortunately most people believe in, condone, and support. And we are seeing the effects of this cause.
Yeah, it's statism, I think what they call it is,
Statism, yeah.
what the religion is. And what you mentioned, what we shouldn't be doing is the murder, the rape, the trespass, the assault. It seems like all of those things the government is actually doing.
Correct.
Whether or not a person's got a badge on where they think that they could do these things to others, or they've got a flag behind them and they got a gun and they can go into these other countries. There's these rights that, each individual has, but, the authority, the people that are supposed to be, in charge or running it is the ones who are actually setting the tone. And the tone is that they're doing this to not only their own people that live in their own countries, but to other countries around the world. And some people even cheer this type of behavior on and say, we need to protect the people that are harming us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the majority of people actually do support government. This is why there can be a standing army on American soil, right? Which is the police and military. This is what the founding fathers, warned everyone about a standing army, and yet we've had one for many years. But ultimately, and this is what the social engineers know, the true power is within the people. Even if you take police and military, which are their order followers, this is the strong arm, the grunts of the social engineers. They are the enforcers. They are the enforcers of coercion, duress, and violence. And just by them taking that job, they are immoral right off the bat. It's not about personality. Well, he's nice, he helps his neighbor. It's you have a job and you identify with that job, and you will uphold the duress and violence. So taking the job is immoral right on its face. But I want to focus on the majority of people that actually condone government and the belief in human authority. And a lot of people, even maybe listening to this right now, they might not think I don't support the wars and I don't support this and that, all this harm and violence and stuff, but yet they vote, or, they support police and military. So this is the people that I'm trying to reach, the everyday person that thinks they are a good person, but yet has not done that process that we talked about in the beginning about addiction, about looking into the mirror and asking those hard questions. What do I believe? Why do I believe? What are my belief systems? And we need to, that process, that shadow work of diving deep within the subconscious and the unconscious mind to bring that to the surface, to conscious awareness, is what we need to do. Because the majority of people, and we can look at cause and effect with the whole pandemic, the majority of people went along with it, condoned it, they complied, and that's a very bad sign. That's proof right there that there is no awakening happening. I would say there's a great awareness happening, which is good, because awareness is opportunity. But yet we need people, actually more people going public and talking about the causal factors, which is morality and natural rights, which is true empowerment. This is the foundation of what sovereignty is. And when someone understands this on a deep level, then they understand their own power, and that government is immoral and illegitimate from inception and should not exist. And the solution is non-compliance. Absolutely.
So Angie says here, does this guy know or work with Mark Passio? And she might not have been here when you mentioned him at the beginning, but I'll let you answer that, because we had someone else just say that he sounds like Mark Passio.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, Mark Passio is, I consider him a mentor and a friend. So yeah, his work has been a huge inspiration to my work as well. And ultimately, what Mark is talking about is absolutely true. I spent several years into Mark's work. First few years of just detaching the emotion and listening to the information and debunking, and then analyzing and taking deep introspection. And Mark is talking about the causal factors, which is vital. People need to understand that Mark Passio is a huge influence and inspiration for many people, but do not put Mark Passio up on a pedestal as your leader. my whole message is that we do not need leaders. We need empowerment and knowledge so we can lead ourselves out of the darkness of ignorance and into the light of wisdom, which is knowledge applied. So yeah, my work, absolutely. I'm talking about objective morality and natural law. Same thing as Mark Passio and many others.
Before we get back into the government, there was just a question here. Is he connected to AA or NA? And I think that maybe has to do with, you going through the addiction.
No, I'm not connected with them. I've never been to a meeting or anything like that. I will say this though, because I've had friends that are involved and stuff, and if that helps you, absolutely do that. But these, AA and NA, I forget the guy's name, Bill something that created AA. There's a lot of mystery traditions that teach this path work of bringing the subconscious trauma out that reflects in AA and NA as well. But I will caution anyone into getting into a religious mindset. But ultimately, the work does reside with you, and you are the only one that can do this work.
I just wanted to add to that before we get into the government. So I've never actually, attended A or NA as in partaking myself. I've always been in control of, what I put in my body. I did do alcohol and drugs for a long time, but it was never an addiction part. It was just, fun and whatever. I was able to stop when I wanted to stop, and I did. But I took some people to AA and I took some people to NA when they needed, to go there. And I had stopped drinking for right now. I haven't drank in 8.5 years. I haven't done any synthetic drugs in 8 years. I had stopped smoking cigarettes 7.5 years ago, stopped eating meat 4 years ago. I've done a lot of things to, better myself. And it's just decisions I made and stuck to it because I really wanted to make that decision. And, there was nothing that was going to change that. I could go to bars, I could go here, I could go there. I just wasn't going to drink because I didn't want to drink. So I was able to control my own journey because that's just, I'm able to do that. So for people that need these things and it helps them, great. But when I took people to AA and NA, and I was sitting there listening to people's stories about how horrible some of these things were, and I hadn't drank in 3 years. After the meeting, I felt like I wanted to drink, because of just hearing how horrible some of these people's lives were. And I'm very empathetic. And so for me, I that wouldn't be a method to help me because, and not to mention what Will said about, being another part of some, culty or religion, where you need this in order to better yourself. You don't. You just need to make conscious decisions. Like Will said, look in the mirror. What do you want out of life? What do you see? Do you want to continue on the path that you're on? Look yourself in the mirror. Is this what you want? Are you happy? If you are, keep drinking. If that's what makes you happy, keep doing it. But if you're not, you can ultimately make that choice whether you want to continue on that path or not. And it just takes you saying, no, I will not comply.
Yeah, absolutely. The great work is a very ancient Hermetic phrase. And what the great work is, it's the internal path work that the individual has of self-development and self-mastery, meaning we're going to reincarnate in this reality to learn the lessons that we need to learn to develop and advance in consciousness. So that is the great work. And then you hear someone like Mark Passio talk about the one great work. Well, if the great work is internal, the one great work is external, and that is inspiring and helping to end human slavery, which is the human condition. So, but what you described, is definitely the great work. That this is the work of self-development.
And that's the road everybody really needs to take. And, there's people do that through shadow work. People do that through tapping. Some people need to, maybe see a psychologist or a psychiatrist to figure out where that trauma was. There's energy healers. There's lots of different modalities. What you feel drawn to, go do it. Go try it. You never know if that's road will help you, in your journey to self-healing and making this world a better place. Because ultimately people ask, how do I make this world a better place? I'm just one person. By changing your world, by making your world around you better, makes the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to touch on addiction as well. And, in my work, I always say, apply it to yourself and then apply it to the world. So if we look at the human condition and what's going on in the world, humanity in the aggregate is extremely addicted. They're addicted to the human condition right now, to religious thought, materialism. They're addicted to comfort. Right? They don't want to be, the majority of people don't want to be in a discomfortable, right? Because this means that there's going to be pain, and they have to look at something that they might not be ready mentally to do. And this is where the lessons are learned. You need to step out of your comfort zone. That is the catalyst of your awakening, for sure.
So back to the government, and people would like to lay a lot of blame on these, like 12 families that are got their tentacles insidious, very twisted. They've inverted everything, and they've really put humanity and the earth behind where we should be. But they're really just playing and using the system against us, where we really cannot comply to their system. And if we don't comply, then the power is no longer in their hands, and then we as the collective can take the power back, and regain our sovereignty like we should be here.
Yeah, and I would highly recommend. You can spend a lifetime diving into the information of the bloodlines and the social engineers, because a lot of people want to put a name to it. Well, who are these people? What are their names? You're never going to know these people's names. Even the 12 bloodlines and stuff. There's the actual people pulling the strings are. They don't have social security numbers or birth certificates, right? They are very much behind the scene, but ultimately, those people aren't the main problem. And I don't really focus on those type of people, because even though they are immoral and they're evil and they're psychopaths, the problem actually lies in the people themselves, in the individuals. So we need to have true care. What do we care about? We say we want freedom. We say we want good health and all this stuff, but there are definitely requirements for change. And that is, anyone listening to my voice right now needs to do the mirror work and dive into the causal factors. And then from there, we need to go public. We're in a very, very critical state where if we want to evolve, we need to get involved. And that's where people don't want to be uncomfortable. They don't want to step out in that. So into that realm and going public and, facing family and friends, or just people in the world. And from that lack of responsibility and willpower and care, we are definitely going to dive headfirst into deeper and deeper bondage. So the ultimate responsibility lies within each of us, in the individual. Our ability to respond. This is what responsibility is. Our current condition is human slavery. Humanity is enslaved, but that doesn't mean you should identify as a slave, right? I am a free being. We are all inherently free beings, but through our actions, right, we are being immoral in the collective. And this is what is, the steadfast forward progress of the condition. So the work lies within the individual, with us.
So if people believe that they're slaves, then they are slaves. And if people believe that they're free, then they are free, or do everything they can to attain that freedom. It's all in the mindset, the way the collective is looking at the predicament that we're in.
Oh yeah, absolutely, for sure. A lot of people are still stuck in this victim mindset where, oh, the the royal families or the bloodlines, these people are doing it to us. They're doing it to us. When in reality, the majority of people are condoning it and advancing this condition, right? So this is where we need to, through their knowledge differential creates a power differential. So we need to take in knowledge and apply that knowledge. That is wisdom. If we're talking about consciousness and the solution is higher consciousness, well, what is consciousness? It's pattern recognition, to have a crude example, right? It's a being's ability to recognize patterns in oneself and in its environment. So in order to raise our consciousness, and raise our pattern recognition, we need to take in knowledge, information. And what kind of information? It's the most basic information that one can learn in this reality, and that is, what does it mean to be a human being? This question, 99.9% of people don't even know the correct answer. And the correct answer is, you are a human being and you take actions, and these actions have consequences, right? There are principles that we need to understand. Self-ownership. You are responsible for yourself and for your actions. Non-aggression. You owe everyone one thing, every being one thing, and that's non-aggression. And principle 3, self-defense. If aggressed upon, you have the natural right to defend yourself. These are the foundational principles of a human being. How does a human being operate? Thoughts, emotions, and actions, right? So as I think, so I feel, and so I act. So when our thoughts get in alignment, right, with our emotions, we're in unity consciousness, and that will output in our behavior. Therefore, we are taking moral action, right action. These are fundamentals that we need to understand through the study of these principles and the laws of nature. This is the solution. This is the master key, because now we're in the realm of true empowerment, understanding what a human being is and what empowerment and sovereignty is. And then through right action, claiming our freedom.
So we had Kyle Kemper, which is the brother of our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, on our show maybe a few weeks ago, and he was talking about there was only about 25% of Canadians actually voted, and out of those 25%, there was maybe 10 or 12% that actually voted for the Liberal Party for Justin Trudeau. So they've got a government which only has 10 or 12% of the vote of the whole entire country, and they've seem to have this authority, or a false sense of authority over people, with a very small percentage of people even voting. So what does getting involved look like to you? Because voting is not working. Most people aren't even voting anyways, but yet, these governments still believe they have authority over the entire population when, a majority is not even voting for them.
Well, absolutely. And when we're talking about the social engineers, these are people that control all institutions, right, in the world, even localized into countries or nations. Voting does not matter whatsoever. Voting is a dialectic. This is a dialectic to give the people the illusion of choice, meaning you can vote. And you have, your two parties, and they sprinkle in little parties in there like libertarianism, the Green Party, and all that stuff, just to catch everyone. These are nets. They're traps for consciousness to get people to believe that they can vote and create change. Voting is violence. It's an immoral action because you are trying to impose your will onto other people. Politics is theater. It is all there to do one thing: to manage your perception. People that think that, their political parties or government actually is in control and creating change is what they want you to believe, because then you think that that change comes out of those systems.
Illusion
But
of choice.
illusion of choice. This is what the Hegelian dialectic is, for sure. Absolutely. And this has been going on for many years, and it will continue to go on because it's the easiest trick in the book. You create a problem to get a reaction from the people, and then they offer the solution as well. Right? So, and you only need one side to buy into the dialectic, right? And that will create a divide and conquer strategy. So left or Republican, Democrat, liberal, these are just two wings of the same bird of prey. And it's all orchestrated to to manage your perception. And by managing your perception, they will control your behavior. That's what people need to understand. There is no voting. There is no political solution. Now, what is the solution? I talked about knowledge. We must take in knowledge and apply that to ourselves, right? Because the law of manifestation does not absolutely 110% work on feelings or intentions. The law of manifestation, the law of attraction, works through actions. Actions actualize. Intentions are just individual mental markers, like a goal for you to reach, right? Like the police officers that, trampled over some of the convoy people. Well, they had good intentions. They didn't want to do that, but they did it while they're out there with the horses and, taking the immoral action to begin with. My point being is that we need to understand this foundational knowledge of objective morality, that morality is objective, that every human being has the same rights and no one is superior in their rights. And the causal factor is harm. And we are being violated against through taxation, coercion, duress, right? This is what people need to understand, is that when I say a term like humanity is enslaved, what does that word mean to most people when they hear slavery? Most people have their own perceived definition. And this is why getting down to the fundamentals, the foundation of everything that you think, and what is the true definition of slavery, right? Slavery is a claim of ownership. It is not, but most people go to a certain time period, Civil War era and stuff like that. And that's what they think slavery is, when in reality, slavery has many different gradients, and slavery is slavery. There's not 1% slavery and there's not 50% slavery. There just is slavery because it's violence. It's violation of natural rights. So what we're experiencing right now is what you would say, is somewhat covert. It's been covert for many years, but it's quickly moving into overt slavery. Overt slavery, at least it's obvious, whips and chains, and we can see it right in front of us. Covert slavery, it flies under the radar, and you need to use logic and reason and kind of put the patterns together. So the ultimate solution is first having a correct perception of the truth of what's really going on in the world, right? And then taking that deep dive into oneself and aligning our thoughts, emotions, and actions, facing ourselves. Are we taking immoral actions? And then once we integrate that knowledge into us, we need to hop on the camera. We need to go to the public. We need to speak, use our voice, which is the most powerful force that we have as a human being, right? The universe is spoken into existence. So we need to speak freedom and truth and objective morality. And, not everyone wants to do a video podcast or audio or whatever. Everyone has, infinite amount of talents that someone might have, but it's all about knowing yourself and knowing those talents and then utilizing them with technology to get that message out to as many people as possible. How freedom works is in the aggregate of society. If that society is moral, then we will see more freedom. If the aggregate society is immoral, then we will see slavery. And right now, the majority of people are immoral by their actions, by incorrect thought and by their actions. This is why we are seeing suffering, and we will continue to see suffering in the world.
So what percentage of people that are conscious or moral can tip the balance of, power that this system, the government has on us? Like, do we need 10%, 30%, 50%? Like, is there a number where we can actually have hope that we can actually do this? Because if there's only 5 or 10% people right now in the Great Awakening, is there even a chance that we can get to 50% of the people what we need? Or do we need, 80 or 90% in order to stop their, terrorizing of, humanity that's going on right now?
Before I give you an actual answer, like a number, I want to say something first, and this is where a lot of people come into this knowledge and they understand it, and then they start doing the work, and then they stop, and hope is just kind of leaves for a lot of people, and I've been seeing this regularly. We have to understand that humanity has been enslaved for thousands of years, thousands and thousands of years. This might not change. We might not see true freedom overnight, and it might not happen in our lifetime. The answer is 51%. Now, you have to understand that as that number grows, the energy, the ripple effect will begin, and it will speed up. The more numbers of people that truly wake up and take action. This is what we need. We need action. So those numbers will progress quicker. But I am committed to this. Mark Passio is committed to this for a reason. It's not necessarily for the love of humanity. It's for the love of truth. Once you have an understanding of what's going on, and you come into this alignment and this knowledge of how the natural world works, you have that moral obligation to truth, to nature, to God, and to your fellow human beings as well. So we need to understand that we're in it for the long haul. If we plant a tree, we might not sit under the shade, right? That's the cliche saying. And it's all about care and willpower. Do we care enough? Is it worth it? Absolutely, it's worth it. You know why? Because our kids are going to be in physical bondage at some point, or our grandkids. So what we do now matters 100%. So, and another topic that I talk about and huge solutions and it's really big in my work is conscious parenting. I'm a father. My daughter's almost 9 years old, and I have a couple presentations on conscious parenting, what conscious parenting really means, and a lot of skills and valuable information in there. I think parents could speed this up tenfold, because we're constantly going to be falling back and playing catch up if parents aren't raising their children correctly and morally, right? Majority of people just send their kids off to government indoctrination camps where their minds get molded, and and the cycle continues. So parents absolutely can change this very much.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's going to lead into the next question. But before I put the comment up, I just wanted to say when I was in grade 3, I believe, our city gave out a little tree to everybody that was in grade 3. And we planted that in front of my house and my parents' house. And, 35 years later, that tree was so big you couldn't even see the top of the tree. So, it was a pine tree, so not as much shade as maybe some other trees or whatever. But, trees, when we do plant them, they do grow. And, it might take a little bit of time, but it does plant, and, you can find that shade.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So this is Aaron says, Jesse, what advice does Mr. Keller have for parents who are frustrated with the ignorance and dangers of the public school system? I'm a single mother of a 6 and 8-year-old. Is homeschooling the answer? Is what that was.
Yes, absolutely. I would say pull your kids out of public school 100%. Now, this is scary for a lot of parents. It's scary because we talked about looking at oneself, and what we're looking at is our belief systems, but our programming and conditioning that we've endured, most of our lives. And we pass this down on to our children. This is generational mind control. So the first and foremost thing that you have to do is understand your own programming and conditioning. Just as the majority of people think that rights come from the government, the majority of people think that education comes from public school. That's absolutely false and incorrect. We as beings are here to learn and grow. The world is our school, right? Learning is daily. We learn experiences and we learn all kinds of things all the time. We need to become autodidacts. So we need to understand that when we say homeschooling, or someone says homeschooling, that necessarily doesn't mean set up a public school atmosphere in your home. I would highly recommend, I'm going to give you some resources. Dana Martin, she is fantastic. I know she was on this show, I believe yesterday, right?
Yesterday she was.
Yes, I'm a huge, Dana Martin's a huge inspiration in my own life and my work. And I've been blessed to converse with her and stuff. So highly recommend checking into her work as well. David James Rodriguez is another one. He has the Valor Academy and the Homeschool Leader. Now, there's many forms of homeschooling, and ultimately it's individual. We're talking about self-directed learning, meaning every person, every human being has a different way of learning, meaning there's many different ways of teaching. And you aren't just the only teacher to your child, right? I mean, anyone that your child comes in contact with could be a potential mentor or a teacher as well. There's apprenticeships, there's all kinds of things. So that's my suggestion is first, number one, recognize and understand your own conditioning, what you think, your own mental definition of how homeschooling or unschooling looks like, right? And then dive into the research and understand the natural versus the artificial. Natural learning is to live, and human beings naturally learn. My daughter learned how to ride a bike all on her own. She learns how to read when she was ready to read, and she's doing phenomenal. Parents we are facilitators. We are facilitating a being's experience. So we are there to provide needs for the child and respect their rights. Children have the same rights as every adult as well. We need to honor and respect this. It's all about inspiring your children to understand this knowledge of morality and how learning actually really truly works, right? Government wants to atomize all the children and put them in their own groups and then mold their minds from there. And if you don't learn that way, they'll put a label on you and put you in a special ed class or call you hyperactive or anything like that. So definitely do your research and look into Dana and David Rodriguez's work for sure, and do it and do it. I know it's scary, but have the care and the willpower to do it. Your kids will thank you.
Yeah, and the schools are Freemason indoctrination camps, and they teach people to become slaves, teach people to become order followers. They take away all creativity, all passions, and they mold people into be worker bees. And that's what, the Rockefeller education is. They took over the medical system, they took over the schools, and, they don't want people who, will question authority. They want people to put up their hand before it's saying, can I go to the bathroom? Instead of just making a decision, I need to go to the bathroom and go. They want you to ask authority for permission. And this is, what they're teaching. So do you want your children to learn that, or do you want them to be free and facilitate their passions? Some children maybe don't want to learn math, and that's not in their passion. Some children are maybe sports inclined. So you facilitate all the different sports and get them to find what their passions are. That's about free learning and getting your children to dictate what they need to learn. You just help provide them with options to find out where their passions are, and then you can see what your child has come here to do instead of dictate what the child is supposed to be.
Exactly. Well said, brother, for sure, man. I mean, many parents have, again, their own perceived definition of how their child is going to be when they grow up, and they pass their own conditioning right down to them. And everything that you said, absolutely true. We have to understand what is freedom, and what does it actually mean? And freedom always starts within your own house, meaning your mind and your family home as well.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, and the government, this is what the social engineers want to do. They want to put the wedge as quick as possible between mother, father, and children or child. That's what they want to do. They want to do that as early as possible, because culture is what cultivates this immoral behavior and the mental operating system of human beings. And it's brutal.
And you're a single mother, so sometimes people believe it's easier just to put them off into the daily babysitter of school, so that way you can go work. But what Dana Martin was saying yesterday is, once you make the decision to homeschool your children, you'll figure it out. You'll figure out how you can make it work. You'll figure out, maybe there's your mom, the grandma, or somewhere else where if you have to work, that they can go there while they're learning their own passions. And if you make that decision, you take, like Will said, you take that leap, and you decide this is what you want for your children, you'll figure it out. The universe provides. This is what the beauty of the universe. If you submit yourself to the universe, the universe does provide for you when you just allow things to happen and ask for things. And like Will said, you make things happen. You can create this reality, and you can make it work if this is what you truly want for your children.
Yeah, ultimately, one thing to know too about learning in general is, as beings, right? We only learn and retain information on the information that we are internally motivated on. Think about, like, I went to public school. I mean, how much of that stuff do I actually remember? Not that much. But the last 12 years, I've learned worlds of information, and I was internally motivated to learn in these subjects and topics. Same thing with children.
And with what you just said, is that if a child wants to learn something, they're going to excel much more than if you're telling them, you need to learn this. You can't go out until you finish this. Are they going to sit there enthusiastically wanting to do it? Or are they going to be doing it because they have to, and not retaining, not remembering, and not having any real benefit to them except for making you happy, so that way they can go outside, and then that information is already gone and out the window?
Exactly. Yeah, man. And there's tons of, look in your area. Check Telegram and all these other platforms. I guarantee you, wherever you are, there's going to be networks and groups of, in communities that have resources, and they get together, and of like-minded individuals, for sure.
Here was a thing on the same subjects. What's your thoughts on homeschooling under the educational system?
I assume that person's talking about, like, I'm in California, right? So you do have to go through some hoops, right, to get them off your back, or they'll come knocking on your door, potentially. Not in all cases. Is that what this person means? That you have to report to the state if you're homeschooling?
No, because my first area of homeschooling is now my current girlfriend. Her kids have never been in a school. She's an unschooler. She loves Dana Martin. She's the one who inspired Dana Martin to come on because, I didn't know about Dana, without her and stuff. And there's some educational plans and you got to do some things and there's some hoops that you go and there's funding for you. They actually give you money instead of paying for your child to go into the public school. They actually give you money, to provide education for. So there's some even benefits, financially when it comes to unschooling and stuff that I found out that I never knew. But what I think the question was, some people want to still continue doing the curriculum of the math and the social and but they're going to homeschool it because this last 2 years they pulled their child out of school because the masks and this and whatever else they pulled them out. But should they continue on with doing the regular schooling but in a home environment without having to go out into these brick buildings?
Yeah, I would say, depending on the age of your child, have that conversation with your child. And first and foremost, find out what they're interested in, what they want to learn about, and focus on there as well. And again, if they want to learn, whatever the topic may be, they might have to learn some steps to get to that process, right? Like, for instance, my daughter wanted to help animals, kind of like a natural veterinarian and stuff. So I got her an apprenticeship. There was some prerequisite stuff that she needed to learn. But yeah, I mean, again, every household, it's going to be different. I think what the problem is that having that relationship with your child of respect and not forcing or treating your child like they need to bend to your will, responding instead of reacting. Like, look, math's good. We need to read. You want to draw comic books? Well, you're going to have to learn how to read. So let's do a little bit of reading and have that conversation. It's all about communication and comprehension, in my opinion, for sure.
And I think depending on how old that child is, you want to be upfront as them as possible and tell them what the actual, indoctrination camps are of school. And if you want to continue on with the math and you're enjoying it and this is what you want to do, they are conditioning. But if that's something that you're enjoying, go ahead, leave them up to their decision. But open up the mind of what is actually going on and then let them choose if they still want to continue. Some kids may just love the math and that's what they want to do. They want to keep doing math problems because that's what their brain is and that's what they were meant here to do. Maybe they're going to be some scientist or mathematician, something to do with math, and they'll dictate to you with what their passions are, but make sure they know what the whole societal school system is and what it does, age dependent, right? You're probably not going to have that same conversation with a 60-year-old as you would with a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old, right? But
you'd be surprised. Yeah, you'd be surprised
nowadays how smart children are. You never
Absolutely.
know. Never
Absolutely,
know what to say. But I think that's kind of good advice for, for anybody who's, kind of going through that. So we have Hope Henry. When you were talking a little bit about government and about just our own accountability. And maybe you can respond to what she's saying here. So she said, sounds to me like he's advocating for no accountability except for us and continuation of targeting whistleblowers while ignoring the necessary accountability towards unjust authority, destroying anyone who cares. While we are individually doing what's correct for ourselves, and by default, all of we engage who help protect us, that we are being targeted and forced to physically fight for refusing to be imprisoned or further damaged through just Jason tactics. And I just wanted to, to give you an opportunity to respond to what she's saying there.
Sure, absolutely. No, I'm not advocating for no accountability. It's actually quite the opposite. I'm advocating for responsibility. Now, by participating in these systems of control, we are contributing and condoning and supporting to the current human condition, right? So this is a huge, huge subject that we can go down. if you're dependent on allopathic medicine, then yes, you're feeding into that beast as well. You know, if you're eating fast food, you are feeding into this machine, and you are suffering the consequences. There's accountability for the people that are violating rights, and that's what that's why I'm saying is that we need to understand where the responsibility lies, right? To say that it's just that it's just government, yet the majority of people are supporting government and think that there's political solutions. That is incorrect. That's immoral behavior, because there is no political solution. So, that's what she needs to. I didn't know if she thought that I was saying, don't do nothing and let the people that are violating other people, like there's going to be no consequences with that. That's why I talked about principles and self-defense, and the self-defense principle, we need to understand that deeply, that if violated and aggressed upon, you have the right to defend yourself. Now, I'm not advocating for, picking up guns and marching out on the street and start to, shoot up a police department or something. But I am advocating for having guns and understanding how to use those. And when that time comes, be ready mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, because we have to understand the veracity of where we're at right now. And that is a huge probability. And how many people are ready for that?
And we are being aggressed upon, like Will said, by the government, the mandates, we are all are being aggressed upon right now. So it's a matter of organizing, figuring out how we can stop them from being able to terrorize, everyone. And this is something that out of, moral responsibility for yourself and for your children, that yes, we do have to do something about what's going on. Like we can't just, ignore it, build our own little community garden and hope the fact that when they starve everybody else out, that there ain't going to be a whole bunch of people going to come to try to get that food out of your community garden. Because, we do need to fix what is happening, and it takes us coming together and organizing, being responsible, being moral and just, and figuring out some solutions how we can stop the government from terrorizing like they have been.
Yeah, a lot of people are still dependent on the system, and that's hard for people to swallow. People need to understand that every outlet of society is corrupt. Education, health, science, which is scientism, every asset, right? It's all inverted. So we need to understand that, and that takes a shift in consciousness, a shift in mind, and then responsibility for your own actions.
Here is a question. What's Will's shirt say? Government is euphemism for?
I'll show it in 1 second. But so in case no one knows, what does government mean? The actual etymology of government. It's in Latin, it's gubernare, which means to control, and mentes is the mind. So government literally means mind control. And government is the belief in that certain humans have the authority or the right to issue commands to other humans, and those humans must obey that, right? So what is that? That's a claim of ownership. So it's slavery. That's the actual definition. Government is a euphemism for slavery.
And, and right now, how many people are, not, part of that actual system? That's where we got to start breaking away from, the government control. And
absolutely.
So what does that look like? How do people get more involved into stopping the government?
Well, they need to have the basic, the fundamentals, and that is understanding what objective morality is and applying that to themselves, and then speaking that into public. That is primary. We need to have greater awareness in the public. Solutions to take is non-compliance and non-participating, pulling your kids out of school. Are you voting? Unregister to vote. You have family or friends that are military or police, then you need to have those brutal conversations on how immoral their job is. All right, to try to influence. This is what we need to do. If we are going to see freedom and achieve freedom, and that's dependent on our actions, whether we are moral or immoral, then we need to use our voice and inform people to look into this information further and apply it to themselves.
100%. So
That's
what
why it's called the great work, right? That's what Mark says. It's the great work because it is the hardest task to do. To look at oneself, their own psyche, right? To look at yourself and then go out into the world and try to inspire other people to do the same process.
So what other stuff are you working on right now?
So my partner and I, John Rowland, we have a website, naturalfreedomleague.com. And we do a live video podcast on Saturdays at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. We also go out into the public and to these events, and we set up a table and we educate the people and the public on objective morality and natural law and the current human condition. So we focus on education, and it's all about getting creative in this day and age with censorship and all that. So we have video series. I have many presentations where I break down in depth on certain topics in context to what we've been talking about. And my work is also on the One Great Work Network that was created by Mark Passio, and that's got all my work on there. And ultimately, I'm an artist. I'm a content creator, and this is what people need to do. If we need to reach the unconscious masses of people, we need to inspire them, right? And through inspiration, this will kind of shake them out of their psychosis and do that internal work, and then and hopefully express through their creative expression to do the great work of ending human slavery.
And you have 3 different websites. We have listed up on the title here. You got naturalfreedomleague.com. What can people find on there?
That's my partner and I's website, and we have both of our presentations on there, our video podcast. We have some music that we do, and my partner John is a musician as well, and he's got some tracks on there. We have a friend named Mike Mattingly that I recorded his acoustic album. He does freedom music. It's phenomenal. It's Funky Father's 6 Strings of Liberty. Highly recommend people check that out. And we got a lot of resources, documents people can download. They can pass out to friends and family or mass produce. There's quite a bit of resources on there. So it's good. The other website is the FUNL Conference. So FUNL stands for Freedom Under Natural Law. This was a group of people in the beginning of the pandemic. We came together as like-minded individuals, as a support network, to just relate to and express ourselves. And, these relationships grew over time. We did some public events. And then finally, a year and a half later, we decided, hey, it's time to create more action. So we decided to do a virtual conference. And we did that in February 12th and 13th. And it was great. It was a 2-day virtual conference, free to the public. And we had some great topics on natural birth, unassisted birth, self-defense, natural law, consciousness, spirituality, occultism. I mean, some really good presentations went down, and I'm really proud of it. Went off with a hitch, and we're looking actually to do another one very soon. So, stay tuned for that.
That sounds awesome. And the onegreatworknetwork.com.
Absolutely. So if anyone, resonates with what I've been talking about, I highly recommend, number one, go check out my presentation that I did at the FUNL Conference, which is titled The State of Freedom, What It Is and Is Not. And I made this presentation. It's an hour and a half. I tried to simplify the profound. So anybody that is coming into this information can start from the beginning, and I work their way up and try to give them it was like a tapestry of information to get to the end results, the main message. And it's very simple, easy to digest. I highly recommend people check that out. The One Great Work Network is again, Mark Passio created this network, and it's 55 and growing content creators under the umbrella of true freedom, ending human slavery, and objective morality, natural law. So fantastic. There's flavors for all different types of people. James Corbett is on there, Vinny Eastwood, of course, Mark Passio, Sethicus Boza, Brian Easterday. There's just tons of big names on there. Larkin Rose is on there. So I highly recommend people go check that out. There's a 24-hour player that's just constantly playing fantastic videos and information.
Yeah, I was just in contact with James Corbett about coming on to the Missing Link, and he said maybe at the end of April or so, that would be interesting. And still trying to figure out how to get in touch with Mark Passio. So I've tried to send a message to him a few times. But in the next 6 months, what do you think is going to happen? And then the question is, the other opposite side of the question is, what would you see in an ideal scenario that will happen in 6 months? So I want kind of both answers. What do you see happening, and opposed to, what if you had a perfect scenario, what would happen in the next 6 months?
Perfect scenario, like to benefit us?
Yeah, like how could, if in the next 6 months you could just, and just kind of like mold, what would you see happening to help us, to get us into a better place?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would love to see, more people coming out into the public and speaking about morality and, the erroneous belief in human authority. This would be fantastic. This would be a good sign that people are, starting to wake up and spreading this information, because you have to understand this and to create change in the world. And because we're dealing with actions of a human being. So that would be great. 6 months, time flies. What we're seeing right now with the pandemic and, all these other dialectics is they're going to keep switching up these narratives as they tighten the grip on the control system, right? So we're seeing the one world digital currency coming out. So it's a good time to also consider, doing things like homesteading and learning life skills as well. I call myself the prepper propagator. So I propagate the knowledge and information of natural law, and I'm also into preparedness. I love life skills and being self-sufficient, right? Talking not being dependent on government systems. So learning how to grow your own food, making tinctures, using hydrogen water as well, and hydrogen fuel as well. So, learning these type of things is really good. So within 6 months, people should be diving into this type of knowledge of morality, but also life skills, right? Because we're going to see, we're seeing the supply chains, we're seeing all these different narratives come out, and all these narratives are just there to keep people into a state of fear and scarcity. And if you're dependent on the government and the government situations, then yeah, you're going to have a lack of, and that's right where they want you for sure. So I think they're going to increase these narratives, and be on the lookout for the winter. I'm sure they're going to bring back COVID. There's already signs of that. So I don't focus too much on current events. I focus on the actions of people and where humanity as a whole is swaying in large groups of people. But, these people they're tricksters. So, turn off your TV.
Speaking of where humanity is swaying, this last 2 years, more people have become aware, more people have questioned, more people have, stopped participating, more people have become protesters in the last 2 years than in the entire 30 plus years that I've been trying to educate people on what's going on. So we have the Great Awakening, we got the Great Reset. We got the Great Awakening, we got the Great Reset. Where do you think that scale is right now? Do you think that we're kind of tipping towards one way or another with the amount of people that are, waking up right now, or as we have some fuel behind this Great Awakening?
Yeah, and I'm a realist, and I absolutely, for sure, do not see any kind of great awakening happening. And because if we would see a great awakening happening, you would see police and military quitting their jobs, and you would see the actual real world action happen. And we're not seeing that. We're just seeing the control system and the Great Reset just continue on, as on schedule, just playing out. I mean, a good example is the Canadian Freedom Convoy, right? That's a prime example of people that had good intentions but did not understand what freedom and natural rights truly are, because it was ultimately a political solution. And what happened? It got shut down. We're seeing a convoy happening in the United States as well, but there's no change there. So people need to understand how change actually manifests and understand the causal factors. So unfortunately, and people can take this as me being negative, and I'm recognizing, I'm doing a correct diagnosis of what's going on. Is there is no great awakening. I would say there's a great awareness, right? And again, awareness creates opportunity, but that does not necessarily mean that it's going to create change. So, people need to have an accurate perception of the actual condition of what's really going on. So,
what's your thoughts on people like the X-22 report or, 107, some of these people that are talking about these military that are, looking to stop these people? We even had Corey Good on, who believes that, we're definitely not in a winning position, but he says that there's this group of people that are out there, these generals that are grouped a bunch of people together that are trying to stop some of these bloodlines, these families from making this Great Reset into a reality.
Yeah, unfortunately, again, that's all misdirection, right? That narrative has been played on for many, many years, that there's some group of people that is the white hats. Q said the white hats are taking care of it. There's a group of people that are taking care of it. The reason why this is misdirection is because that removes the responsibility and the power from the individual. We need to understand that this is on us. There are no saviors. Even spiritually, we are the spiritual beings. We must save ourselves. So putting all the eggs in the basket, saying that, oh, well, there's a group of people that are taking care of this. What does that do for the majority of people that know that information? They just sit back. They sit back and they take zero action. That's a big problem. We need to understand that change lies with everyone that's listening to my voice right now, and everyone that sees this later, and everyone else in the world. It lies within the individual. And the only way we are going to see change in the positive towards freedom is if individuals start activating their willpower and creating change by taking action. And this is why we need to take in the information of how reality operates and how the human being operates to get an accurate perception of reality, and then align our thoughts with our emotions. So as we think, so we feel, and then so we act. But the key is action. If anyone has a message of that's not action, then that's complete misdirection. And I'm not saying like Corey Good is an agent. I don't look at people like that. I look at what their message is, and then I'll know if it's negative or positive, or if it's supporting inaction. It's misdirection for sure.
Oh, he said we need to look within, we need to take action, we need to take responsibility. His message is that same aligned with, what you're saying and stuff like that. But he was just saying that there is a group, but we can't count on them because they're not winning. Like they're not, he says that there are people out there that are doing that, but they're not in a place where we can just say, oh yeah, we'll be okay because they'll take care of it for us. So he
Yeah.
aligns with that. And he says that we need to take responsibility, and all starts with looking within.
Yeah, it's just even saying that though, people think that there is a group, that's fighting this family or these families or this control system. That we are doing this to ourselves. That's the problem. People think, they want to externalize it and say, well, it's this group of evil people. And yeah, there's psychopaths out there for sure, the social engineers, but we, the people, are actually doing this to ourselves. We are in consensual slavery. Through our actions, we are condoning and supporting this, the majority of people. And that's the problem. That's the self-realization that we need to have.
What's your thoughts on people believing that this is all biblical and, this was prophesized and, they just waiting on Jesus to come and fix this for everybody because they believe it's already been written, and they're very, very, stern, and they're very, set in their beliefs and thoughts that it's really hard to, get them away from anything but the belief that this is God's plan and this is just being played out exactly as it should be.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm seeing that a lot, and we've been seeing this for a while too. Again, this is what we can call the savior complex. People need to understand the main problem is religion. Religion meaning relegare, to hold one back, from the truth, right? The Constitution, the real Constitution, the real religion is the natural world. The Creator put the through the laws, through natural law, through these forces that we can discover and observe the effects and come to know, this is the real Constitution, the real laws that we need to understand. All cultural religions are there to put your consciousness in a box, and I understand. And there's exoteric and esoteric, meaning the exoteric is the outer ring, the outer shell that the majority of people know. This is a control system. This is to abdicate responsibility that someone else, this is the savior effect. Someone else is in control. Someone else has this. And then there's the esoteric, the inner meaning, which the inner meaning holds the truth. And this is where the allegory is and the message. But ultimately, all cultural religions are there to a form of mind control, to keep one enslaved, one stagnant. We need to understand that's a huge problem. So people think that, well, it doesn't matter. In the end, God wins, Jesus wins, all this, all mind control put there by the social engineers and the bloodlines, how you said, right? They created these religions. That's what people need to understand. That's a deep, deep subject. And a lot of people can't handle that topic. We talked about Jordan Maxwell. I highly recommend people checking out Jordan's Maxwell's work. He dives into a lot of the allegorical and astrotheology and stuff with the cultural religions. The true religion, right? Religio is the positive connotation, means to unite, to bind together. This is talking about nature and human beings. We are not separate from nature. We are one. We need to understand how nature operates. Nature, the word nature, means of or related to creation or God. The signs are all around us if we have the eyes to look. All cultural religions are man-made and put there from the ruling class of their time. And they're put there to control human consciousness. So we need to break free from that for sure. Because again, what does that create? Stagnation and inaction.
What's your thoughts on people actually having experiences with Jesus or with demonic possession, actually having, an actual experience where they're afraid because of some kind of demonic possession that they felt or seen somebody under, or people that are, have, Jesus is everything because they actually had this experience, and why the Bible means so much to them because their actual experience that they had.
Sure, absolutely. And when I was saying, exoteric to esoteric, every cultural religion has an esoteric core, right? But this takes deep study, deep study. You're not going to find this from going to church, going to priest. You need to look into it for yourself. I mean, there's some researchers that dive into it, but the esoteric is a pathway of self-development. It's got a little sliver of truth, while the exoteric is all deception and lie to keep you stagnant. So these cultural religions, there is information that one can use to help, to achieve self-development and self-mastery. But ultimately, these ancient stories, and I'm real big in the Nordic mythology as well, and these talking about the gods and the goddesses, right? What are these? They're not actual gods and goddesses, right? Ruling over people. They are archetypes of the human psyche. Because once you understand the principles of natural law, right? Mentalism, correspondence, polarity, vibration, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. These are the metaphysical laws that are the boundary conditions of reality. Diving deep into these, then you can start getting into the esoteric knowledge of like what mythology is, and that these are allegories for aspects of our own psyche, our own consciousness. So people that have these experiences, absolutely, yeah, you're definitely going to have those experiences. And this is where, the information that you hold in your mind, how it's so powerful, is because one might have an experience of, interacting with a form of higher consciousness, right? And it would take the form of Jesus, and someone else might have an experience with Odin or Woden, right? So it all differs. It all differs on, but it differs on what you're holding in your mind, right? But they have the same factor, is that it's all part of your psyche, consciousness, and interacting with higher consciousness, which I'm an animist. Animist is, anima mundi is soul of the world. It's living nature. We are interacting with nature nonstop. There is a living field that we are a part of. This could be called the morphogenic field, or just consciousness in general. The natural world is alive. And, yes, we can have experiences with these for sure.
Now, what about when people pass on from here and, they're on to the next, and then they can stay around and people can actually have conversations with them, and they actually tell them, can you tell this person some certain thing, or maybe actually have an experience? What do you think that is that, they're experiencing, and is that entity still here communicating with them?
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. I've communicated with many entities. And my coming out of my addiction, I experienced many out of body experiences, which made me look into that information further and do lots of practices, and commune with entities, you could call them, right? Ultimately, parts of our own psyche, or others, or the collective consciousness. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, it happens all the time, for sure. I've communed with great spirits many times.
So there are spirit guides, angels, things out there that are here to help assist us through this. Are there also the negative, demonic, evil entities out there that are trying to, be that little devil on the shoulder, trying to, get people to do horrible things, or maybe possess people, an actual entity instead of just a mind, allowing itself to go there?
Well, Yeah, I see demons all the time in the form of police officers and military, for sure. These are demons. Well, what is a demon? Now, if someone has been indoctrinated by Christianity, then they think the devil is a red-horned, beast, right? And people want to think that demons are they can manifest whatever their perception thinks they are, but really we're talking about consciousness. I'm not negating that they don't exist, but these are levels of consciousness, and anyone can tap into this level of consciousness for sure. One can absolutely be possessed and be possessed by demons within their own psyche. We have to understand that the mind is not in the body. The mind is a field that we are a part of, that's connected to our individual vessel, right? But also a part of the greater mind, the one mind as well. And there's all kinds of different levels of consciousness in between. So again, getting into like Bob Monroe, if anyone's familiar with the OBEs and out-of-body experiences, right? This is something that he experienced many times. And he said that, when someone transitions into the next life, they actually go through a stage of kind of transition where their belief system, what they think happens after death, it will manifest, and they'll stay in there for a little bit until they kind of normalize, right? So if someone's into Christianity, they're going to get the cliche heaven, and then, or Valhalla if it's the Norse tradition, whatever. But ultimately, we are creating this from consciousness, and so yeah, all fascinating subjects that I'm into. This is why the ancient cultures and the mystery traditions, they focused on mentalism and the laws of nature so much. Advanced people think, modern scientists say that, they were primitive cultures, in ancient Egypt and Kemet and all that, right? These people were way more advanced than us. They were way more advanced in consciousness, in the mind, and the laws of nature, right? This is why we don't see mechanized things from their civilizations, because they were in symbiosis with the natural world, and they had that emphasis on consciousness. They had that gave them abilities and attributes to prepare for the transition of this experience into the next.
Do you think when people dream that those are like out of body experiences and their consciousness is maybe going somewhere else to possibly stuff that maybe they think about that they're going through, or maybe to learn, or to even actually go to other worlds?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Rudolf Steiner, this was a big part of his work as well. He said that when we dream, we're actually integrating our consciousness, whether it was through that day or just things that we've experienced. So we do our work in the dream state. I've had lucid dreams many times. Out of body experiences are something totally different. But yeah, no, dream work, I think, is a highly effective thing that someone should get into, and you can access that, with a dream journal, or just journaling your dreams to advance and hone in on the capabilities of remembering and becoming more conscious in your dream state.
Do you think people should be meditating more or learning the practice of meditation? Do you think that helps them with their self-development, maybe taking, accountability more into their own hands?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna give you three. So meditation is just one, and absolutely phenomenal. In an age where polarization is rampant, a lot of people are in an imbalance, right? This is why they have red and blue, Republican and Democrat. This is all for polarization. So it creates an imbalance in the psyche. Meditation, the word meditation means bring back to the middle, center path. This is what meditation is good for. It's for balancing the hemispheres of the brain. Now that's one technique. Another one is concentration. concentration, some people might need focus. They might have a high, mental bit rate, right? Where they at a high level of energy where they need to actually practice concentration, focusing on a single point, right? This is also very good at for manifestation and focusing energy to a topic or an event or something that you want to achieve or goal. So you have meditation, concentration, and then imagination. Imagining, we must the imagination. We must see it before we can achieve it. And this is why, if we're going to achieve freedom, we need to know what it is first, in depth, and see that. And imagination is, in my opinion, part of the energy of the creator. This is, this is creativity. It is imagination, is part of the creator, in my opinion. Absolutely. But another technique too, I'll add, is introspection. And this can kind of be in between meditation and concentration. Introspection is internal work where you are thinking deeply, but simply on a topic or a concept, and you sit with that topic or concept, and you just sit with it, and you see what kind of comes to mind, and you think deeply upon that. It works really good with shadow work as well.
Jennifer here says Bardo states. I never heard of that, so I'm not sure if you know what that is or what she's referring to.
Yeah, I think Bardo states would be a very aggressive state of energy with other entities as well, right? She might be able to comment on that. Entering into the Bardo, it's entities that are at base consciousness or low consciousness. It's kind of a collective of that state.
My girlfriend Angeline here says the only problem is that a lot of people do not know source is love, and then meditation becomes blocked because it takes trust and knowing you are loved to let go.
Oh yeah, great point. I'm glad she brought that up, right? There's two forces in the universe. There's love and fear. Now, there's many forms of love. And the love that I want to talk about is the agape. This is source love, divine love. This is the love for truth and nature. This is way above love, that how I love my daughter or someone loves their significant other. We're talking about cosmic love. This is the love that we need to understand and tap into. How Angeline said, source love, right? And the love for doing the right thing. And this is where, understanding morality and doing the right thing comes into play. We access this. And being an animist, having that symbiosis of the symbiosis with nature is activating and tapping into that cosmic love as well. So we are manifesting true moral action. Good comment, for sure. And what do we see nowadays, right? Most people are ruled by fear, and this is the problem. They're immobilized by the fear state. And you can look at love and fear as two forces as well: evolution and involution. Evolution is the expanding and evolving and freedom, right? The force in the universe. Involution is the contracting, the degrading, and the stagnant force of the universe. So most people are in that state of fear, and they know that. The social engineers have this deep knowledge of occultism, right? Hidden knowledge on how things truly operate, and they use this to their advantage.
So they've done everything they can to put people into a state of fear, to take them away from their own true power in order to program them and get them to do whatever they want them basically to do.
For people to program themselves. So, and remember, no one's doing this to us. We are doing it to ourselves. So we are consenting to everything going on. Yes, there are social engineers that, they're putting up 5G towers and stuff, but you have control over yourself and you are taking the actions. That's why, but most people aren't conscious of certain aspects. It's buried deep into the unconscious or the subconscious mind. And this is why the internal work is important. So they keep people, they perform, they project on the TV something scary or something that someone would perceive as scary, right? And then that makes them perform a certain type of action, but they are doing the action themselves. So by them not knowing themselves and being in a fear state, they are taking incorrect action.
Sandy's wondering what your opinion is on tarot cards and angel cards, just cards that people use to help guide them in general.
I love the tarot. Absolutely. Yeah, no, the tarot is a powerful tool to get to know oneself and to understand natural law. And I practice the tarot. I also practice the runes as well. So the one resource I would recommend actually that blew my mind when I got into it. Nice. Absolutely. Excellent. And, using, well, I'll finish what I'm saying because you got me excited with that. So Mark Passio did a phenomenal tarot presentation where he used the Kabbalah tree of life and incorporated that within shadow work and aspects of what's going on in the world. So using the tree of life, phenomenal with the tarot that I highly recommend that person check out. Runes, another powerful tool of gaining knowledge of self-knowledge for sure. And also Vedic astrology, science of the heavens, which is also as above, so below, as within, so without, is also the science of the mind, right? So these are tools that, especially Vedic astrology, we can look up in the heavens, in the stars, and it's a map. And these are the energies that are, we can forecast with these, but it's also a map of our own consciousness, our dharma, and our karmic energies that we brought into this existence. And so, I mean, these are sciences, especially Vedic astrology. The social engineers use Vedic astrology so that they know what energies are coming in and when they're going to, implement some kind of psyop or false flag. We are now in the age of Aquarius, which Aquarius is an air element. It's also the humanitarian, represents networking, right? It's very, it's very digital, cryptocurrency-ish. It's like something that would be Aquarian, but air element is also mental. It's also the mind. This is why we see a lot of psychological operations going on. So yeah, it's a good time. And they know that the energies are coming in. This is air energy. So it's going to affect the mind. It's going to affect consciousness. This is why we have a great awareness right now. If we were in a different condition, this would be a very uplifting advancement in consciousness because of the energies coming in. But we have this, with our current human condition, we are enslaved. Some people are feeling the energies and are questioning things, right? This is the great awareness, but they need to go further. They need to question what they're questioning and dive deeper and gather the tools, especially the tools on how to think. This is also called the trivium. The trivium is a methodology of truth discovery, right? Which is ultimately critical thinking. And then you have the quadrivium, and even goes up to the pentivium as well. Even for the people that were talking about homeschooling and stuff, the trivium is phenomenal to look into. Jan Irvin, Mark Passio, they have great presentations on that. There's a couple books that are phenomenal. What is the trivium? The trivium means the three-way path to truth discovery. So we have grammar, logic, and rhetoric, or in a different jargon, input, processing, and output. So meaning that we gather all the information, all the knowledge, we use logic and reason, and we process the information that we gathered, right? And then we come to our conclusion and we output that in behavior, right? This is also the scientific method as well, the real scientific method, which has been occulted from us, right? They took the trivium out of education systems hundreds of years ago, because what that does is gives someone the tools to recognize problems and make a correct diagnosis of what's going on, either inside them or in the natural world. So yeah.
When you mentioned that, you love the tarot and you use the tarot, yesterday we had Dr. Lorraine Day on. She's very much strict Bible, but she's open to everything else. Like, she's very aligned with, not taking the Jews, that there's these people. She knows about the families. She knows about kind of everything that's going on, but she's a strict, well, I can hear the cat.
It's my little dog. He wants to say hi.
Yeah.
Saw my neighbor walking.
Oh, no, that's awesome. It was a puppy.
Yeah.
And so she is very, like, when talking about the card, she's like, oh, that's Satanism. That's, and like, how do we coexist when we align with people on certain things, but then yet, some people will think that you're a Satanist because you promote tarot cards, and then there's such a big disconnect, but we're on the same side against these people that are doing this to us, but yet they believe if you do certain things that you're just one of them, that are actually trying to do this to us.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is a good topic, right? We, doing the internal work, we need to understand and we need to ask ourselves again, what do we believe? Now, someone that has the indoctrination and the cultural indoctrination, such as, Christianity, like Miss Day, right? She sees the tarot and what she thinks Satanism is she only is getting that from the Bible, right? Which, again, if anyone has, the courage to study what the Bible truly is and who has created the Bible, this is a man-made creation that was made for control of the people. You can look into the Council of Nicaea, check into Constantine. Look at the missing books, and then also understand the occultism that's in the Bible as well, of astrotheology and allegory and stuff like that. So these are cultural conditioning and programming that is being implemented. Someone is saying, the tarot is satanic, right? This is a big problem. This is someone that is, unfortunately, is under mind control, right? And to clarify on Satanism as well, because I hear this a lot, especially from Christians. And I will say this too, and this might seem kind of harsh, but understanding what the allegory of Jesus Christ is and what Jesus Christ was doing. He was talking and teaching about morality. He stood up against the bankers of his day and against the Romans, which were the order followers or the police and military of his day. So he was preaching and practicing the golden rule, which is objective morality, right? Do unto others and how you would want done unto you, right? So this is the type of information he was propagating. This is the esoteric version. Now, of course, the social engineers are going to throw Romans 13 in there, right? And that says, obey your government like a good little slave and pay your taxes and all that stuff, right? And people don't question this. They, Christians. So I'm being harsh, and because I'm calling out the Christians in name only, right? But they are part of the problem, unfortunately, because they are condoning the control system, right? So, but Satanism, and being an animist, everything is consciousness, right? And this, and we know this as well. It's not a belief system. We know that everything is consciousness. The all is mind. So Satanism is a state of mind that is potentially within us all. And what is it? It is egotism. It's moral relativism. it's eugenics. These are all tenets of Satanism. The social engineers, right? I mean, going back hundreds and hundreds of years, this is part of the mind controls, that they want people to think they are something else. This is how they hide in the shadows, right? So people think that Satanism is again, the devil and someone possessed with demons and stuff, when in reality, Satanism is someone that believes morality is relative and they take immoral actions. They are selfish and self-centered, and they're egoists. So,
And Jesus also taught people to not participate in religion, and that you have your own, ability to have your own relationship with God through love. And yet they created a religion out of what he told people not to break away from, and they created a whole religion out of it. So they done the exact
phenomenal point.
opposite. They've done the exact opposite of what he came here to teach, but yet they use his teachings to convince you that you should follow the rules, but they've inverted the fact that he didn't want people to follow the rules.
Exactly. Yeah, phenomenal point. Big difference between Christianity, right, following the Bible, which is the control structure of the social engineers, and then having an understanding of what Christ's consciousness is, and understanding that this quality, this aspect, is within us all. And we can look in this in many other cultures as well, right? The Bodhisattva, Woden, right? I mean, even in Norse, right? Odin, I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds years before Christianity, right? And Odin, he didn't sacrifice himself for other people. He sacrificed himself onto himself, right? For knowledge. What type of knowledge? Self-development and self-mastery. To do what? To become a moral person. And this is how he developed the runes. And so, and he was also hung, right? So hung from a tree, crucified, not called crucified as well, but you get my point. But my point being is that through these cultures, that there are stories and allegories with the same core message, and that is how to be a human being, how to be a true moral human being. And there are certain pathways, and we need to become the seeker, the archetype of the seeker. This is the hermit card, the one that dives deep into knowledge and thinks deeply, and activate philosophy, philos, the love of wisdom, and dive deep within our own psyche and in the laws of nature to discover the truth, not our truth, not a relative truth, the truth. So very, very important. There's two mechanisms to create change. There is philosophy, which is internal, and there is technology, which is external. And we need to use philosophy to better ourselves and have a deeper understanding, and then use the technology to have discussions that we're having like right now to spread that message of what true freedom is, natural law, and morality.
I find that people that are, spreading that message, like I had someone come on one of my posts and say that people don't eat meat are demonic. And I was said to her, I'm like, you're the one who's acting demonic by, separating and categorizing. And like the people that go around saying that, card reading, because it was in the Bible, is satanic. But I believe they're the ones who are giving power to Satanism by making that consciousness come in, that satanic thought come into somebody that's harmlessly, that's a good person, that helps their neighbor, that does all these good things, but yet they like to have cards, and then trying to make them feel guilty about something that comforts them. Making this satanic claim is what actually gives rise of power to this satanic system, not the actual card pulling.
Exactly. No, you're absolutely right. And ultimately, where does that stem from? That is so self-loathing, right? Deep down, somewhere inside their own psyche, right? That they have not integrated and healed from. They hate themselves, right? This is what lies in there, and they're projecting this out. It's activating a level of consciousness in within them, and then they were projecting and lashing out at people, right? So for instance, eating meat. I'm a vegetarian for many reasons, health and moral reasons, right? I do not have the right to kill an animal and eat that animal. But someone, might yell at me, right? There is a correct answer, right? There is a truth to that, right? Who is correct? Is this person, yelling at me because saying that, because I take the moral decision to not harm a being, I'm wrong for that? And absolutely, no, that's incorrect. So we see a lot of polarization nowadays, and then people are projecting their own um, psychic, baggage onto people. And you got to have thick skin and ultimately and know yourself. And these people have to uh, they have to dive deep within their own psyche. So those are the type of people that the social engineers feed off of, and they are the ones making the control system advance.
And they use that fear to keep people divided through all of these different, I'm this, I'm that. As soon as you start classifying yourself as something, you're dividing yourself from the collective and the whole, making now them have more power over you because now you've just divided yourself from everyone else.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what the social engineers want. They want people to identify with their chains and their slavery. And cultural religions do this too, right? They want you to identify with Christianity. I am a follower of Christianity, or I am a banker, or whatever job you may have. In reality, no, that's not true. Right? You are consciousness having an experience, and you're here to learn many things. But as soon as someone identifies with that job and they feel like that is them, then they have all these obligations that they're trying to perform and trying to accomplish under the guise of that identity,
And
right?
limitations.
And limitations, exactly, absolutely. So well said.
Okay, and last topic, I guess, wanted to pick your brain a little on is someone asked, what's your thoughts on reptilians? So, what's your thoughts on other life forms in our galaxy? Other beings coming here to Earth in the physical, the Galactic Federation that, a lot of people resonate with. What's your thoughts on the whole, space and other type of races that are here on Earth?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, and I'm really against belief, right? And I'm all for knowing, right? And I hope people don't twist my words and say, "Oh, well, this guy says he knows everything." That's not what I mean. What I'm saying is that it is healthy and it is good to say I don't know. So, um, I don't know about space, other beings, the Galactic Federation. I know that there are people that say this, right? But I don't personally know about that, and I don't really focus on that much because I understand that change is really going to be enacted within ourselves. Now, reptilians, right? I'm an animist. Everything's consciousness. Now, reptilians could be a species. Absolutely. I've entertained human intervention theory and stuff like that. Could be a possibility, but I choose to look at it from a different perspective, that the human being, or looking at it as reptilians being a state of mind. So the human being has three parts of the brain, right? We have the brain stem, the reptilian, which operates survival, fight or flight. Then we have the mammalian part of the brain, which operates mainly emotions and desires And then we have the frontal lobe, the neocortex, which is the higher order thought functions of logic and reason. This is what completely separates us from the animal kingdom. We are not animals, although we do have an animal characteristic, the mammalian brain, and we do have a reptilian characteristic of the brain, right? The brainstem. So, but we are completely different because we're capable. We have the capability of logic and reason. Now, reptilians. I see the majority of people in the world in the fear state as the reptilians because they are operating from the brainstem, from the fight or flight. They are actually not using their human portion of the brain, of logic and reason, right? They're mainly using their reptilian fight or flight and the mammalian, which is all about emotion. That's why emotional control, people are very reactive on stuff, and those parts of the brain are firing the most. And this is where people operate from, right? And this is part of the problem. So yeah, I see reptilians all the time. So might be a different answer and that someone could consider for sure.
Well, this was Susan's comment. Oh my God, we've been the reptilians all along.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, yeah, we have that reptilian capability, that level of consciousness that we can activate for sure. And how does one know they're in a reptilian mind state or the mammalian, right? And I mean, you have to observe your own behavior and dive deep within your own psyche. So that's how I say, how do you know someone's under mind control, right? Start having a conversation with something that makes them uncomfortable and see how they react. You'll know they're not using logic and reason if they're giving you an emotional reaction. Oh, I'm not a slave. What do you mean? Government's not slavery. Start freaking out, right? When you're explaining them that, hey, government can't delegate a right that it doesn't have, and you can't control other people and harm other people. So
do you think that's why, people resonate so much with, say, like the queen being a reptile and all these things, is because she's acting from a reptile place, a reptile state of mind, which, and in some cases, people say that they see people with slits in their eyes because they're reptile brain dominant. So they're actually, physically being able to transform, almost shapeshift into some of these other state of consciousness where people see them as different places because that's what their dominant brain is, projecting outwards.
Yeah, well, I mean, it can go either way. I will say this, that yes, I think, I mean, when you start understanding the social engineers and how this is a priest class behind the veil, not known to human beings, meaning not known by name. And these are advanced psychologists. And I think ultimately they answer to something higher to human beings as well, whether this is, of some type of macrobe consciousness that is using them to feed on planetary consciousness or the collective energy. I mean, who knows? I've dove deep into Lloyd Pye's work and David Icke and all these researchers, and that's what we need to do, is have an eclectic array of information, and then put the pieces together and try to build on other people's work. Are they actually physical reptilians? I mean, I don't know. It's possible. Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. These social engineers are way crazier and psychopathic than we can ever imagine, but they're incredibly smart, and they know what they're doing for sure. I do know, not know, but I mean, diving into Lloyd Pye's work and human intervention theory, that the human being, we can look at, I believe it's chromosome 2, that there was a genetic modification. So there was interference at some point in our natural state of humans, right? That we were modified, and genetic expression codes were turned off, that we actually can activate these through a lot of preparedness and activate internal activation within the psyche. This is what modern scientists or materialists call the gray matter in the brain and stuff like that. But we need to understand that modern scientists, they have removed spirit out of science, and that's incorrect. Spirit or metaphysics or the ether, and this is part of science, because all is spiritual and physical at the same time.
Angeline and I are watching Greg Braden's Ancient Civilizations on Gaia TV right now, and they talked about Enlil and Enki, and I believe it's Enlil is the geneticist, and they actually changed some genetic forms. Your thoughts on the Sumerians part in our history?
Oh yeah, no, that's it. I mean, it's a fantastic and fascinating path to go down and to really consider. Probably, again, to throw Mark Passio out there, he did a phenomenal job on cosmic abandonment, diving down that path. But I actually explored that whole realm before I came across his work, and Lloyd Pye is it just blew my mind, man. I mean, actually giving, facts and evidence that we have been tampered with, and looking at Sumerian texts and stuff like that. I mean, you just take Sitchin out of the way, and I mean, his work is profound as well. But if you remove him and just even look at someone like Lloyd Pye, it will blow your mind. So yes, I do think, and I'm speculating here, I do think that there was a time, you could call it a golden age, where human beings, or our natural or our state before it was interfered, we were in harmony with nature, and that might, who knows what that could have been like. It could have been phenomenal, but then something intervened for sure, and with immoral action intervened and changed us, to use us as a control system, to feed off of our energy, and here we are today, trying to break the slavery still after thousands of years. I think this is our task and our duty to do.
I've seen it here better than it's supposed to be. I've seen how utopic it can be here, and it's one of the reasons why I keep doing what I'm doing and trying to open and elevate consciousness in a way that, to get it to a place where it's supposed to be, because it's supposed to be literally heaven on earth. This is supposed to be heaven, not hell, which, in some cases believe people are living this in hell in this existence.
Yeah, well, I take a different perspective. The actual word utopia means nowhere, right? So Earth is a training ground. It's a training ground, meaning that we can manifest here and inhabit vessels, human bodies, to learn and grow. I think this is the original intent of Earth. This is why we speculate the beings came here and messed with us, and made this some kind of control system. But inherently, this realm can be whatever we want to make it. And I think it is a training ground for consciousness. Therefore, it will never be a utopia, but it can be a place of true freedom, where human beings understand the foundational cosmic laws of morality and what does it mean to be a human being and not to harm others. And then from there, we could advance consciousness at a higher rate, right? And with less harm. And the sky is the limit on what kind of expansion in consciousness and achievements that we can achieve in that kind of state. If everyone, we're all equal in our rights, but yet we're all different in our characteristics and our abilities. Imagine if everyone had a dream of what they have a realization of what they came here to do. If I came here to be just master the plant kingdom and dive into tinctures and working with the plants and the plant consciousness, and that was my lesson that I came here to learn. If we all had that the world would be incredible. But I do think there will always be the threat or the possibility of harm and danger, because this is something, what I'm about to say, a lot of people don't like, is that people don't have the right not to get sick. People don't have the right not to get hurt. This is part of life. This is part of the process of learning. We come here and we live and we learn, we get sick, and it's how we deal with that. We get this experience from that, but to think that we can be here and never get sick and never get aggressed upon, I don't think that's realistic.
Well, I think that we get sick is because of the toxins, and they've been poisoning us through food, water, air, and all that stuff. And I'm more into the terrain theory, is that we get sick because, we are being poisoned. And since I stopped eating meat, for over 4 years ago, I haven't had a cold or flu since. And
Yeah,
I
me
used to
too.
get sick once or twice a year. And
Yeah.
I don't get that anymore. No green phlegm, no coughing, no none of that. So not saying I might not ever will, because my diet is still not perfect. I still eat, some gluten. I still eat some white sugar. I'm still breathing in whatever is out there. But because of, me eating a lot more fruits, and it's not just because I quit eating meat. I eat a lot more fruits and vegetables. I eat a lot of supplements. I do a lot of things that have made my immune system through the roof. But meat is one of the most toxic foods that people eat right now,
Mhm.
because 90% of the pharmaceuticals sold in the world get injected into animals. And so you eat that, you're eating a toxic soup. No matter how much, people believe they need it, you're still putting toxins into your body. Unless you're eating, wild game meat, then, most likely, you're putting toxins into yourself. And, I'm not one of those people that say someone should or shouldn't eat whatever. You eat what you want. Your choices are your choices, right? I'm not on anybody for eating meat or not eating meat. That's ultimately everybody's free choice to do what you want, with this training ground, like you said, while you're here. But know that what you put into your body will make you sick or not make you sick. You ultimately control, that destiny here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll comment on that too, because my work, it's all about morality. It always comes down to morality and the actions that we take. Are they creating harm or not? Um, Now, I do think, and this is a tough subject for a lot of people with meat and stuff. I am a vegetarian. Um, I do think there is a vegan agenda to harm people for sure. But it's all about less harm. And if someone, I would highly recommend someone to look into the knowledge of going vegetarian and the effects that it has on the body and understanding the body. And but also the moral aspect, right? We don't as human beings, we don't have a right to kill an animal. So, and that's hard for people to understand too. But again, that's a tricky road, because so many people are reactive. We're not going to be able to help the planet or the animals, right, if we can't help ourselves. This is why I focus on morality, human beings, and the human condition of slavery.
Yeah, awesome, brother. I believe there was one more thing. Edomites. What's your thought on Edomites?
Edomites. What is that again?
I'm not sure. I think that's something from the Bible.
Edomites. Is that the Essenes?
Someone just put Edomites question mark. So,
Yeah, it sounds familiar, but I'm not. It might
Edomites
be slipping my mind.
meaning a member of ancient people living in Edom and regions south of the Dead Sea in biblical times, traditionally believed to be descendants from Esau.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not too familiar. I'm not sure if that's maybe part with the Essenes, like the Essene Gospels, and but yeah, I'm not. I'm not too sure. Sorry, I wish I had some information. I like learning about all kinds of topics. Right? It's like jack of all trades, master of none. So
No, that there's actually, oh, I forgot what that is. That's actually, they inverted that. It's jack of all trades is better than master of one,
mm,
because like there's a little saying behind that, but they tried to make people believe, well, master of none. But if you're a jack of all trades, you're actually master of all of them instead of just mastering one.
I like it.
It's
I like it.
somehow. It
Yeah.
sounded good when I saw it on a little TikTok video, but
Yeah.
I don't totally remember that now. So, what's your final thoughts? What do you want to leave people here with? A little bit of, some kind of positive reaffirmation of anything, or whatever you want to say. This is your chance
Yeah.
for your final thoughts.
Cool, man. And again, I appreciate you having me on. This was great, and great comments and responses from the viewers. That's awesome. My ultimate message is we need to get back down to the fundamentals of what it means to be a human being. And a lot of people think they know this, right? But I challenge people to really dive into this concept about natural rights. What is a right? Where do our rights come from? And these basic questions of morality and exploring other people's work, right? We need to seek truth and speak truth. So I recommend everyone check out my freedom presentation. There's nothing more important than freedom. Freedom is a natural state of creation where we can have free will expression unrestricted. And unfortunately, we're not in that condition, or far from it, and we need help. We need people to step up and understand the basics, and understand what creates change and how do we create change. And it's definitely through our actions. So yeah, man, I appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thank you for spending this time here with us. Thank you for, helping consciousness, in every way that you do, for being who you are, for, just being that, beautiful soul that, is reaching a lot of people. And after spending this time with you, I get a better understanding of who you are and, what you are as a person. So definitely welcome to come back here on the Missing Link anytime.
Awesome.
Appreciate everybody, all your likes, comments, hearts, shares, stars. The Missing Link is love inspiring new knowledge, and Will definitely had a lot of new knowledge here for us. A lot of people enjoyed it. Someone was asking what's on your shirt. Maybe you could stand up and
Oh yeah.
show them the last part of it. So
Government is a euphemism for slavery. And this is actually, I talked about the FUNL Conference. This is one of the presenters. They did a natural law birth, which is unassisted birth. They have a t-shirt company. It's called Speak Truth Tees.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And next week here on the Missing Link, we've got on Tuesday, we've got Derek Bros. He used to be with Paramount Pictures. He's got his own big channel. I think he just messaged me. They just reached 90,000 people on, his channel right now, and through censorship and through people getting deleted. That's pretty good for, what he talks about and stuff. So he's going to be with us on the next Wednesday, and then next Thursday we've got actually 4 people. We've got Mike Singer, we've got Carol McIntosh, we got Mikhail Lumen, and we got Josh Monday. So we're gonna have 5 people next week on the Missing Link. Again, thanks for making this what it is, and all your support, your love, and all you do to keep me going on this journey to figure this all out like everybody else. So love y'all. Love you, Will. Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it, man.
We'll see you again soon. So bye, everyone.